Welcome to the Christopher Peter Review, the political economic perspective on our public policy, our economy, and our overall society. In this episode, we are going to discuss an issue that has plagued our society for quite some time. And that issue is our problem with illegal immigration, which is creating severe challenges across our society. No longer just isolated to the border states and communities that these individuals run into. Neither the Republicans nor the Democrats have found a workable solution to this issue. Democrats have called for policies that resemble open border policies, embracing illegal immigration when the bulk of the problem was thousands of miles from their city limits. Pushing from a lawless nomadic approach to regulation on our borders. Republicans have called for strict unrelenting border security with deportation regardless of whether any part of the migrant family has a legal claim to remain. Despite approving funding for a border wall, the construction took long enough to allow the next administration to stop and roll back any protections. Now the problem is growing in places like New York City, Chicago, Boston, and other blue areas that became sanctuary states and cities before learning the error of their ways. During the holiday season, I experienced the issue firsthand, seeing bus drop-offs in the middle of the night so the illegals could disperse to the nearest train station and find other parts of New York to reside. While many people in New York travel at night to avoid the mass congestion of traffic that is the holiday or weekend commutes around New York City, it is rare to see tour buses parked at train stations in Long Island. Especially in areas that are completely residential. No longer can blue state residents pretend the issue does not exist. No longer can they ignore the risks that red states have complained about for decades. On the same note, red state politicians have helped exacerbate the problem by dispersing the illegals to sanctuary cities, saving the federal government the trouble. There needs to be a reasonable solution. And we cannot just continue to repeat the same talking points. Calls for amnesty or mass deportation. Let us start off with defining the problem. Jennifer will lay out the problems experienced with this issue.
The communities that proclaimed themselves as sanctuary cities or states did so without the expectation of ever having to see the problem arrive at their doorstep. Sure, cities like New York City had some dealings with illegal immigrants, as some believe that it is the best place to blend in and find employers that hire illegal labor. But not at the levels they face in the last few years. First, the main problem that we all can agree on is that these communities were not prepared to fund the surge in residents that illegal migration places on a community unwillingly. The increased burden on public services like healthcare, education, housing, and protection. All for additional people who will not provide additional tax revenue streams. Many areas are seeing public places become temporary encampments for the illegals. See hotels filled with non-payers, delaying service to guests who would otherwise provide a taxable and universally beneficial exchange. Rather, the government is bearing greater expense to cover the needs that a foreign government should have borne. Actually, American taxpayers are bearing the expenses that a foreign government was supposed to pay. Billions of dollars in taxpayer funds being spent on supporting the results of criminal behaviors. While we like to believe that every one of them is here for economic opportunity, there are too many criminal events that are causing even the most progressive person to reconsider their view on the issue. There have been many notable criminal activities that have been associated with illegal immigrants recently. Notably, the murder in Georgia committed by an illegal immigrant, who was out despite committing other crimes. Attacks on law enforcement and others throughout society, as these individuals are not being detained. And issues with fentanyl and other drugs. The second major problem is the security risks unvetted immigration has on our society. We see the effects of what happens when enemies are able to cross a border that is either unguarded or deterrents are incapacitated enough to allow for horrific actions. Do we think that we are immune to experiencing similar events? The number of people encountered with ties to organized crime like cartels or are on terrorist watch lists are on the rise at our southern border. And that is from the small population the Border Patrol actually interacted with. What about the portions that went through undetected? Or those that received a court date that they will not show up for? There are reports that nations are emptying out their prisons to send their criminals as part of the large caravans heading northward, reducing the cost and risks in these nations as well. While there are people who think America is too involved in the affairs of others, people should not think that inheriting the problems caused by others is the solution. There are some legitimately seeking an opportunity for a better life. There is a legal channel for that. Always has been. There is a serious level of inequality that is being shown here. When is the last time we have seen our government go this far for our own homeless or Americans in need?
The real question we have is what can we do about the problem? Joe Biden came into office and immediately rolled back border security measures that proved effective during the Trump era, where the border was more secure than it is now. And even under Obama. Not perfect, but better than it was or is now. To improve the situation at the moment, Biden could easily rescind the executive order used to roll back the executive orders he issued and re-implement the solution to the problem. Force compliance to the legal process. That is what Biden wants to do with our tax code enforcement. Why should our border policy be any different? Physical border security measures are needed as well as technology solutions to monitor the border. We see that need in Ukraine, in Israel, and on our borders as well. I believe that we need to increase the deportation of those with any semblance of connection to criminal activity and previous deportation. Let them wait for a court hearing via Zoom or Teams outside of our border. There can be a level of compassion here at the same time. A potential olive branch is to revisit the guest worker program offered in the Bush era, which can give opportunity to those who are truly seeking economic opportunity. This will allow for our economy to secure the low-cost labor needed while these individuals get access to the means to help their families. Another potential solution will be working with our border allies to serve a greater role in economic cooperation. Maybe some of the caravans may not come all the way up if we can do more near-shoring by replacing our addiction to Chinese production with closer-to-home production in Mexico. Create more jobs in the USMCA region that will slow the trek. Mexico can have a better economy than it does not being a better partner in the alliance and maybe help provide greater stability in the region. There needs to be more encouragement for nations to shed the acceptance of proven failed ideologies like communism and any form of socialism in favor of a market-based economy. And having these nations with pools of cheap available labor can help revitalize their economies by leveraging their labor markets. That brought economic viability to China, India, and Vietnam. The same can happen in this region as well. This can help avoid having to make the dangerous journey simply to find work. No solution will work unless the nations that are the source of the issue help contribute to the solution, rather than continually fueling the problem.
I agree that more economic opportunity in regions like Mexico can be a good thing. But, nations that allow these caravans from passing through should share the cost they allow to be transferred northward. Reducing foreign aid to the nations of origin to offset our expenditures is a fair consequence to illegal behaviors. While some may say that it will only make the problem worse, the nations could be incentivized to do the right thing to get a portion of the funding restored. Nations should not build an economy around foreign aid, money wires from developed nations, or sending their expenses elsewhere. While there are people who view work as exploitation, the reality is markets elevate people. If you have an abundance of cheap labor, then trade labor needs to produce goods for income and compensation. This is a reasonable and sustainable solution to the issue. The continued practice of exporting their potential assets is not sound economic policy. The power of domestic production is being taught to us each and every day, but most do not want to see it. Nations that produce their bulk of their goods can overcome challenges. Even global penalties for their own bad behaviors apparently. Instead of exporting the unused labor, find new uses for that labor by importing work and opportunity. Makes perfect sense.
Change like this will not be easy. There might not be enough talented labor in these communities. But there could be if we worked with them to develop the skills and trades needed. Instead of relying on communist regimes with tight gripes on their society, we can help turn some of the socialist quick-to-fall governments into potential democracies with market economies. The issue is always how fast can the gains be realized. Many people are not willing to wait. They have a need for instant gratification. It may take programs that send people who came here illegally and work back to help train others. Seems like a radical idea, but might be the best way to allow for the transfer of information. I think it is important to think beyond the constraints of the current narratives. We might not be able to take in the burdens from everyone else. Nor can we deport every illegal migrant back to their nation of origin. But maybe we can find ways to craft solutions that provide benefits for all sides. A big thank you to all of you in the audience. Your viewership is appreciated and valued. Please follow the Christopher Peter Review on social media and continue to visit www.crcreview.com for new episodes. Thank you once again. Until next time.